Hey everybody, hope you're having a great week. I just wanted to come and recap what we were talking about Sunday. So Sunday we looked at and really kind of asked this question of why do we exist? I would say a lot of us probably have asked this question at some point in time of our life. Like, what's the point? Like, why do I exist? Why was I created? This short time we have on this earth, like, what is our purpose? What is our meaning? And so in the book of Genesis, in the very beginning, in chapter 1, it reveals to us as humans why we were created. Why do we exist? And so we unpacked that and saw that because we bear God's image, this is very telling and helps us understand why we were created. So in the sermon, we dug into what does it mean to bear the image of God? And we saw really 4 implications to really help us to see this is why, since we bear God's image, this is why we were created. So number 1, you were created for God's glory. The Westminster Catechism says it this way: what is the chief end of man? The chief end of man is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever. Like, this is why, because we bear God's image, we were created to reflect Him, to glorify Him on this earth. This is very telling for us to think about, of even in our life, like, am I living for God's glory? Because this is why I was created. 2, we saw that we were created for relationship. So you were created to be in relationship with God, not just to reflect God, but to be in a relationship with God, to enjoy God, to know God, to walk with God, to talk with God. And so this whole thing of why we were created to be in a relationship. 3rd, we saw that we were created for responsibility. So as He creates humans and places them on the earth, that we don't just exist on the earth, but He gave us responsibility, that we're to do things. We're to be fruitful and multiply. We're to subdue, have dominion over all the creatures. He actually gives a command to be obeyed to Adam and Eve about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so He gives us responsibility here. So not only do we reflect and have a relationship, we have responsibility to God and to creation that we are a part of. Lastly, we saw that the implication is that we're to value human life. And so because we bear God's image, that means that every other human also bears that same image. And so I wasn't just created to love God, but I was also created to love one another. And so we need to value human life, because human life is important, because all people bear God's image. Now, on Sunday, one of the things that we talked about is, I think that's awesome to finally, this is why I was created. This is why I exist, for these things. There's a humongous problem, and that is that every single person that is listening to this, you are incapable of doing all of those things. And I think this is really bad. I told a story of my wife has these silver bells that she puts out for Christmas. And every year when we put them up and we pull them back out, they're dirty and they're marred and they don't look very pretty anymore. And because of sin, because of the fall in Genesis chapter 3, the image of God was not destroyed in us, but it was marred and it was twisted. And so instead of living for God's glory, we live for our glory. And instead of living in relationship with God, the scripture says we've actually rebelled against God. And instead of having responsibility and living in obedience to God, we do whatever we want. And instead of valuing human life, we harm people with our words or actions. And so when we begin to look at, because of sin, it's actually marred the image of God within us. And one of the things we saw Sunday, which is so beautiful, and I just want to encourage you with today, is to remember the beauty of the gospel, because while we are incapable of doing it, that's the hope we have in the gospel, is because Jesus did. Jesus, all 4 of these things, perfectly embodied them as He lived this earth. He lived for God's glory, lived in perfect relationship with the Father, lived and obeyed in every single possible way, and loved people as He was on this earth. And then what was crazy is He went to the cross, He died on the cross and exchanged His life for ours, and then was resurrected. So we have hope in that. So anyone who places their faith in Jesus, one of the things that the scripture begins to say is He begins to renew within us the image of God within us. And so how do I begin to live out why I was created? It's only found in a relationship with Jesus. That it's in Jesus that as He takes on my sin, He gives me His life. In this process of we call sanctification, begins to shape me and mold me and transform me into the image that I was created. Man, I hope this was so much hope. Is that the image of God and why we were created is found in Jesus. That Jesus in us is able to make us reflect God, be in relationship with God, to live out and be obedient to things God's called us to do, and to value and to love our neighbor as ourselves. And so it's in Jesus. And so I hope this week was encouraging for you. Actually, I think on our website, you can actually go check the sermon out. We go into more detail on all these things. But I just want to encourage you. Man, I hope you know Jesus. because it's only in Jesus that you can really fulfill the purpose that God created you. God created you to reflect Him. And my prayer is that this week, as you live out your life, that you would indeed reflect God because you bear His image. Hope you have a great week, and hope to see you Sunday. Thanks.